there again, and now I can show you this beautiful beach without the mist. Gorgeous sunny day. Hopefully it's not too windy. Look at these gorgeous green hills. Oh my gosh, how beautiful. And you can see like the white cliffs. It gave the island its name according to the Greeks, wasn't it? That called it Albion. Albion, the White Isle. And they say that this land is covered in chalk. That's why it's white. And the chalk ridge runs from this area called the Purbeck. That's the Purbeck that we're looking at, and that runs all the way diagonally across the country to East Anglia, to Norfolk. And it's the same strip of chalk that runs all along. And also it goes a little bit further down, actually. It goes down to Devon, so it makes this diagonal line connecting up with Salisbury Plain, where Stonehenge is. So you can imagine there's this long strip of chalky land that is actually dotted with so many ancient monuments, Stone Age, Neolithic, burial mounds, and of course Stonehenge. And sorry, it's a little bit windy. For the Neolithic people that were in Britain at the time, you can imagine like Britain was full of forest, absolutely covered in forest and swampy kind of wetlands, and then all along the ridgeway of the chalk was like scrubland, so just like little shrubs and things, and it was kind of like a clear pathway that they could use for travelling long distance. And that's why every year they would all gather at Stonehenge for a big summer solstice celebration, and use this magnificent chalky ridgeway as their path to all get together. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? And over the centuries, you know, then we had we always had migration coming into Britain across the Channel, across this little bit of water that separates us from mainland Europe. And the Neolithic people, hunter-gatherer people, started adopting agriculture. And you can imagine like these hills might not be the easiest places to do agriculture, because it's a very thin layer of topsoil above the chalk. And I'm giving you a little history lesson today, but I think it's fascinating to imagine the kind of societies, people that lived here, how they lived in this environment, on this landscape. And it was because of agriculture that a lot of forest was lost. They were clearing the forests to make more room for agriculture, and the more they grew wheat, they were growing wheat and storing the grain, and that is really what helped humans prosper, because they were able to store this grain and have this kind of surplus backup of food. So if you're going out hunting and gathering, you know, you always know that you've got all this grain at home to make bread, and it just meant that you could avoid periods of starvation, and populations grew and grew and grew, and then we were getting all this Celtic culture from the mainland. And they were speaking a language that is something similar to Welsh, and then they were getting, you know, traders coming across. The Greeks and the Romans and all kinds of people from Europe came across because the southwest of England was really popular for its tin. We had tin mines, and that's what you needed in the Iron Age. As we went from like Bronze Age to Iron Age, they're all after the tin. So you can imagine here there's actually, you can't see it here, but there's a river mouth just behind those houses, and ships would come in to the harbour here, and the Romans came and made some deals with people. And there's lots and lots of like Roman mosaics and all kinds of remains of like a Roman town, Dorchester. And that is actually nearby there that we have like the first depiction of Jesus, supposedly, in Britain. And that is a place called, what's it called again? Somewhere in Dorset. Oh gosh, that's just left my brain for a moment. But it's a mosaic, and it depicts Jesus, what we think is Jesus, with two pomegranates, which were pretty popular symbols to associate with him. And that symbol, the what's it called? Key row. Yeah, so that's kind of how we identify that, you know, it was probably Jesus. Can you imagine the first Christians, Roman Christians they would have been, you know, because Christianity was like very like urban religion. People, well, we say urban, you know, it was like these small towns at the time, you know, that's what they considered urban, in Dorchester. And what a fascinating history. Can you imagine, actually there is a Roman temple on the hill over there somewhere. Yeah, it's up there somewhere. There's a Roman temple, the remains of a Roman temple there, which they say has some indication that it was for healing. It was like a place of healing for the god. What's the name of the guy that Asclepius? How do you say that? You know, when sometimes you read a name and then you never actually learn how to say it. Yeah, which is really fascinating when you go up there and you kind of imagine the Celtic tribes and the Romans and what kind of relationship they had. A relationship based on trade, and we know that the Celtic tribes here were minting their own coins actually for trade with the Romans, so it was pretty important for their economy, I guess. And you know, they might have had good relationships and bad relationships and different opinions at the time, but there were all these different tribes that had different kind of allegiances. And what's really fascinating is that Dorset, the name Dorset actually, it may have something to do with all of the fortified settlements of the Celtic tribes. They say like it means something like stronghold or something like that, maybe. And they found the remains of the bones of, you know, people that were buried there, and they discovered that these communities were matrilocal, meaning that when they studied the DNA of the remains, they found that the women were the ones who stayed put, like generation after generation, like they could trace their mothers, whereas the males, the male bones were more often outsiders, people who travelled in, which is really interesting when you imagine that kind of society that was like focused around mothers being the centre of the community, the ones who kind of have that connection with the land. And I think that's why we get this idea of like an earth goddess, land sovereignty goddess, is because of that matrilocal society that existed a long time ago. I really hope you can actually hear me over the wind. I'm like trying to shield my phone from the wind. So yeah, what more can I say? I love it. I love the history. I think it's fascinating. I hope you do too. Leave a comment and let me know what you think. Thanks, bye.